I'm going to describe very briefly an ordinary problem that exists at the moment and has existed for many years in the world of assessment. And I'm going to illustrate an approach that we're developing to get some way towards overcoming that problem. And I think, if it works, it has messages for a much wider sphere of influence. I was involved in the 1985-86 launch of GCSE and was very excited about the valuing of coursework assessment. Because what we were valuing was work that was going on anyway. They were good learning activities, and we were giving credit for learner growth. We were rewarding qualities of capability which went beyond knowledge and skill and included those interesting personal qualities of stickability and confidence and teamwork and all those kinds of things. We had effectively real performance assessment with grades that mattered and made a difference. I should say that most of my observations here apply in the world of design and technology, which probably none of you have anything to do with. But that enables me to say you can distance yourself from my comments that are about to come, because I'm sure they don't apply in your schools or in your subjects, but think about them if they do. The problem with this view of coursework assessment was the pressures that now exist in schools and have grown progressively over the last 15 years, which concern the external pressures. Ofsted, A to C percentage pass rates, league tables, to the point where grades now are more important to schools than they are to the learners. And there's consequences for that. And the consequence is that in terms of a lot of coursework, we don't end up with portfolios that reflect real experience of designing. We end up with fantasy portfolios, which are based on specially designed projects with very limited choice, that are tightly managed by the teachers to guarantee performance output, to avoid failure, to hit all the assessment buttons. I'm sure it doesn't happen in other subjects or in your schools, but I'm just describing what has happened a lot in the world of design and technology. And we end up with students producing stage-managed sham portfolios of their coursework. My two boys were doing design and technology when they were going through GCSE. One of them was a much better designer than the other, and he got the worst grade because he wasn't prepared to play all the games that you had to play in order to get the good grades. The other one was a bit more sharp and was prepared to play that game. The policy response, cutting a long story short, is to ban coursework. And for two reasons: we don't trust whose work it is. Was it your mum? Was it the teacher? Or was it Google? We don't trust the assessment, unacceptable reliability. So there is a kind of very brief description of a problem. And I was getting vociferous about this in QCA, and they said, okay, well, what would you do about it? And we created a project which we're calling Escape, where we are trying to create real-time, raw performance portfolios, where they're not doctored. There's no time to kind of make them pretty. You get the performance real-time, as it happens in the classroom, emerging live from the creative workspace. We're using handheld devices, as it happens, and they go directly into web-based portfolios. We are doing this not just in design and technology, but also in science and now in geography. We are valuing active learning in real dynamic spaces. So they are e-portfolios, but they're not created in conventional IT suites, which are typically very sterile places. They're wherever the learning happens, in design studios, in science labs, on geography field work. The devices allow us to collect the activity as it happens live, and because it's only data, you can move it around, so you can build in teamwork into the activity, so one person's work can appear on another person's device. And the whole thing, design talk, incidentally, has emerged as a very interesting indicator of capability. The whole thing is collected on in a web-based portfolio. It emerges there dynamically. So what you end up with is a kind of storyline that takes you through the experience of the students designing as it happens live. So that's part of the initiative. It's to try and get a real document, a real statement of what the experience was of, in this case, designing, but it equally might be a science investigation or a geography exercise. Thereafter, the issue is how do we move into assessment? So we've done the raw performance portfolios, emerging from creative workspace, using handheld devices into the web portfolios. What we're now interested in is how we can use this technology to change the nature of the assessment process as well. Because we have web-based data, it's ubiquitously available, so we can have any number of people engaged in the assessment process, and they can be anywhere in the world. We're using a Thurston Pairs model of assessment. I don't know how many of you will ever have heard of this. Most of the problems with assessment, most of the inaccuracy, well, no, there's all kinds of sources of error in conventional assessment processes, but one of the big sources of error is the fact that we have to put numbers onto things. If you ask a teacher to rank order the performance of their students, if you've got a pile of 20 portfolios to mark, or 30 portfolios to mark, and you were asked, can you put them, from the best that end down to the worst this end? Teachers will do that with phenomenal reliability. You ask them to mark it out of 100 or 70 or whatever it is, the numbers start to introduce problematic reliability. Thurston Pairs just enables you to just look at a pair of pieces of work and identify the better one. So we're using teachers' judgments to do that, and it automatically creates a rank order of performance with astonishing reliability. The reliability comes partly from the fact that the teachers that are making the judgments are no longer just the teacher in the classroom, but the collected body of teachers. With current coursework arrangements, my students do a coursework project, I mark it, and I'm probably the only person. It might get moderated, but probably won't externally, so there's all that kind of problem of error. In this case, when the portfolios are in the website and people are doing the pairs judging, in this experiment in 2007, we had 7 judges looking at 250 portfolios. Each portfolio was compared to at least 17 others, and with a very high reliability coefficient on it. And what it has the effect of doing is kind of democratizing the assessment process. All the teachers are involved in making this. Every school that was involved in the pilot, and we've just finished another one with 20 schools around the country. So we've got groups of 25 children in each school. And for every one of those schools, the teacher becomes part of the judging team. And they don't just judge the portfolio of their own class, because all the class portfolios go into a national pot. And then they're looking at performance across the whole nation. So that their view of what counts as the kind of range of work that might be seen is enhanced by this. So it's kind of national standards as a form of professional development for teachers, to see what standards are, what the work is like out there in the big wide world, not just in my classroom. So in the process of sharing standards, they're kind of creating standards. And when we put that back to the learners and say, involve them in the judging process, they start to say, well, this piece is better than this piece. And the teacher says, well, why is that? Why do you think that's good? And then the students start to articulate what it is about this work that's so powerful or so interesting? So for all these reasons, the Escape assessment strategy is made possible by digital performance capture, which loads into web portfolios, which makes them ubiquitously available, and then using a web-based portfolio distribution system to the judges and the judging system. So the whole thing is kind of dependent on that technology. And in order to, we were working just on those handheld devices because they're so nice. And I don't want to upset Graham, but we're no longer just staying on handheld devices because most schools haven't got whole class sets of handheld devices anyway. So we've now built the system into laptops and desktops and so on. So we can go broader than that. So the policy response has been, it worked. Gosh, well, let's not call it a research project anymore. Let's just implement it. Let's have real GCSEs and real diploma awards run by awarding bodies. And we want you to start in September '09, and it'll be a formal QCA off-qual pilot. What we've got now is real digital performance assessment with grades that matter and make a difference, I would like to believe. And the heart of it, you might think, is technological, but it's actually not. The heart of it is that we've managed, by making use of this technology, to get back to a kind of form of portfolio that reflects the real teaching and learning, the real struggles with, in my case, design and technology, or in another case, science, or in another case, geography. The real struggle, as it happens, for students in an activity over time. And I think that I'm going to finish early. How about that? There's 1,000 things I could go on and talk about in more detail about Escape, but it is essentially a solution to what I was describing as a kind of underlying problem that I believe still exists in the world of assessment. Thank you.